Ethan Victory here, and in this segment, I want us to talk about how do you script your winning speech or presentation. It's important in the sense that sometimes you have opportunities to speak or to present. So if you do not at least outline something you're going to talk about, even if you're a gifted speaker like I am, you want to be as effective as when you have a clear plan on how the presentation should flow. When you're not clear about your messaging or how your message should flow, then you won't look as confident. You will hesitate. You will look disorganized if to the extreme cases. But if you at least know the flow, you know the journey, then you know how much fuel you need in the tank, so to speak. You know whether you need a raised car or one whereby even if it has a low clearance or low gradient is okay. So knowing the journey or the destination is very, very important. So in the same way that is crucial when you're on the road, it's in the same frame or mindset or frame that you should think about when you're speaking, when you're going to deliver a speech. But when it comes to when people are invited to speak, or even when they start scripting or scribbling what they want to talk about, I see the top two mistakes that people have. And before the mistakes, by the way, when you are organized and you know how things are going to flow, you look more powerful, you look more confident, and therefore you look more persuasive. And when you're persuasive, then the audience is able to listen to you more, take on what you're talking about, and most likely act on what you're talking about. So that's the value of us talking about scripting your speech or presentation. Now, there are two top mistakes I see. Number one is not knowing your audience, because if you don't know your target, it's just like someone creating a product. Just think about a business coming up with a product and they are not clear about who is going to buy that product. If you found a business person or a manufacturer and they produce something like this, you're like, okay, so who are you going to sell that to? Like, I don't know, but I'm sure there are some people who will like this. You think they are crazy. You think they are not serious. So a professional business person knows the market that is going to buy the product or service that they are producing. In the same way, for you, your product is your speech. Your listeners is your market. So you need to know your market, in quotes. You need to know your audience. So if you don't know your audience, then that's how you will be second guessing yourself. Your message will be all over the place. You want to be targeted and focused. But when you know who your audience is, what they might buy or might not buy, what they like, what they might not like, then you'll find yourself, you'll find your message being super targeted. So the second mistake I see is not being clear about your purpose. Purpose is the same as some people will refer to as the objective. So when you're not super clear about your objective, then you also struggle. But when you're clear about your target or your objective, and I'll show you how to craft and specify that kind of purpose, then you'll find crafting your speech is much, much easier. So if that's the case, then let's see how we can address those mistakes. Number one is to know your audience. And the first part of knowing your audience is to know what are their fears? What are they worried about? You can call them fears, stroke, worries. What are their fears or worries? Because part of your speech ideally should be to help them address their worries. If you can allay their fears and worries, then you look like a savior. But if you increase their fears and worries, then you're an extra pain on their plate. You're an extra pain in their neck. That's very, very important for you to know. The other one is, besides their worries and fears, is what are their dreams and desires? Meaning, where do they want to go? And I'll shortly tell you how you can figure out this, because then it's very important. Because part of your job is not only to reduce their fears, to allay their fears, but to help them realize their dreams and desires. So you need to know what those are. The other one is frustrations, or in other words, what keeps them at night, meaning sleepless. More or less like number one, but this one here is even more specific. What are those things that when they think about them, like sleep disappears, for lack of a better word? Write them down. Again, you're working at understanding your customer, your listener, the people you're going to talk to. The other one is, what are their achievements? You want to know their achievements such that you can celebrate with them, because when you celebrate with them about their achievements, they will feel good about themselves. I remember in the year 2002 or one, I believe 2001 or thereabouts, I was speaking to a certain group of high school students in Virginia, USA. And I got to know that one of their achievements had been that they had won the district soccer championship. So I said, look, I know that you, in terms of fears, worries, or problems or frustrations, I also got to know that John, I still remember the name, that John had lost his father, I beg your pardon. So I highlighted that. I know that one of us, John, lost his father, so let's pray for him. I also know that you won the district soccer championship and you should feel proud of yourselves. So give yourselves a round of applause. Okay. So let me ask you a question. In that moment, which took, let's say, 20 seconds, what did I achieve? Type in the chat box. Let me know. What do you think I achieved in that moment? By me mentioning those two details, what did I achieve with the audience or my listeners? Or one of you, if you are not in position to, okay, let me see someone has typed. I captured the audience. Yes, but it's true I captured the audience, but what helped me capture that audience? What is it that in that moment captured their attention?
I think there was confidence because the feeling that you know them.
Thank you very much. Yeah. So they're like, oh, this guy knows us. You use the word I think, because you know,
Also,
I
yes,
think.
yes.
Now, of course, for you know, so the other
Yeah.
colleagues on the call may not know. So when you use the word I think, for the benefit of us who are just here, who are joining me for the first time, the moment you use the word I think, it sounds like you're not sure, you're not confident of what you're talking about. And yet in communication, part of your job is to communicate and transmit certainty. Okay? So these are some of the things you benefit from, hanging out with me here. Okay. So not only do I appear like, pardon me?
In this case, it could be thinking, because I wouldn't say that I was sure. It was an attempt.
Yeah, I understand where you're coming from. Either way, you want to delete the word from your vocabulary and look for other words.
Yes.
So it's okay to say, yeah, because then if you say, here it's okay, but here it's not, then you might find yourself using it where it shouldn't be anyway. So you're safer totally deleting it. I was reading a book last night, and was it last night or it was during day? So this guy was talking about that the key to breaking the habit of smoking is to focus on one goal and one goal only. Just make sure there is no cigarette in your mouth. And what he was saying is that the moment the cigarette gets into your mouth, chances of you smoking are very high. In the same way, if we notice that a certain word is dangerous, then we are better off keeping it away from our mouth and our mind as much as possible. Oh, not only do I appear like I know them, but then in communication, there's what we call authority. So now I appear like an authority, and people want to listen authorities, they want to listen to authorities. The moment you appear like an authority, then the chances of your message being taken on are very high. I believe one of my public speaking videos has been published. And one of the things I talk about that one of my teachers in persuasion said that part of your job is to reduce resistance and increase compliance when you're communicating or persuading. So the moment you appear like an authority, then you increase compliance to what you're talking about. Then the other thing which is very important is if you can get to know their internal language or culture or lingo, what some people call their lingo, that will be powerful. I was part of a group recently, and they were saying, oh, for us, instead of do you click, we say clock it. Clock it. You clock it. This lady was in her 20s or thereabouts. So you clock it. You don't click. You don't click it. You clock it. I was like, wow. So if you're speaking to such a generation and you use the word clock it, then now you know you're going to communicate. You're going to your message is going to land. Your message will be taken on in a much more comfortable way. The other key thing to note that I've not captured here is to know the age bracket. It's very important. Get to know their socio-economic standing. Get to know their education, because then all this should influence. For example, if you're writing or scripting your speech or presentation, it will influence how simple your messaging is or how sophisticated it is and all this stuff. So you need to pay attention to these matters. Okay. All right. So first of all, are we clear so far in terms of how we are moving? So then now let's talk about clarifying your purpose. So clarifying your purpose, you need to ask yourself, and that should be like at the top of your, assuming this was the page, at the top of the page, I'm pointing there on my screen as if you're seeing it, but assuming this was the top of your page, then you write the word. So typically what you would do, assuming this was the top of your page, say this is the title of my speech, and this is the purpose. So that's what you do. Actually, this would be misbehaving for me to do that. So that's what you do on the top of the page. Let me clarify this. On top of the page, you do this. Okay. See, this is the title. This is the title of my speech, and this is the purpose for my speech. And I'm going to highlight that. So how do you describe your purpose? The purpose, the way you do it is, this is what I want my audience to know by the end of my presentation, stroke speech. My presentation, stroke speech. This is what I want my audience to know, feel, and behave. Okay. So this is why here I have think and know. What do you want them to know? I want them to know that, assuming you're speaking, let me speak the language. I know most of us are from far away who are in the room. So it could be that you're going to speak to these young people and you're like, okay, I want these people to know that their future matters and school is not a joking subject. And I also want them to know that if they don't straighten up, if they're not well behaved, they might miss out the opportunities. They may not finish school. That's the knowing part. And then you say, now that is the head. That's the head. And then the second part is the feel. This is what I want them to feel. The feel is the heart. So head, heart. You want to move the message from the head to the heart. Now, oftentimes we communicate logic and we think that's enough, but that's not enough. So you need to communicate to the heart also. And remind me to give you examples on how to communicate to the heart. So feel could be, so you want them to know that, hey, it's important for them to take their education seriously. And to feel, the feel could be, I want them to feel a sense of urgency. I want them to feel a sense of gratitude, because some of these young people take things for granted. They don't know that there are many people out there who do not have these opportunities. You want them to feel a sense of commitment. You want them to feel a sense of ownership, to know that the future is in their hands. And these are things you need to clarify, because if you don't, then you're going to miss out down the road, as I'll show you how to structure your message or speech. So you clarify this, and then finally say, this is what I want them to do. So you are clear that my call to action is for them to have a commitment. If you recall, some of us who were in high school, there were those commitment cards of staying pure. Okay, I recall that. So it could be that what you want them to do is you want them to finish and graduate. That's what you want. That's the action you want. That's the ultimate commitment. You want them to commit to that and also attend all the FAWE events. So is this clear so far, the clarifying your purpose? Because then this is like your terms of reference. So last time when I was coming to speak, I received a letter from FAWE, and the letter clarified my terms of reference. So these are your terms of reference. And unfortunately, most times when people are going to write or to script their presentation or speech, their TORs are not clear. And if your TOR is not clear, your message will not be clear, period. So let me tell you the power of this, because then now everything else, once you've clarified this, everything after that is supposed to fulfill and help you achieve your purpose. Okay. So just remember that. Okay. So now that we know what the purpose is, now we can move into scripting the presentation. So remember, you need to, again, to recap, you need to know your audience, then you need to clarify your purpose, and then only and only then you start scripting your speech presentation. If you've found yourself in that situation, I have, whereby you've not clarified the audience, you've not clarified the purpose, like the purpose is not super clear, but you just jump into scribbling down the points.
We might be guilty more in terms of spoken.
Yes. Yeah, I'm talking about speaking.
In spoken, it could be that sometimes because of the issue. And it's interesting when you brought the aspect of know your target or your audience.
Yeah.
Because you find that sometimes somebody comes with a message, and then you find a certain kind of audience, and the person may not even have the emotional intelligence to say, okay, now I don't need to read or to state everything that I had written. For instance, you're thinking about policymakers, and then you find students. Then automatically, the speech or the discussion should change. But you find somebody has prepared their speech and they are coming and they still, and you find the community members for who, even if I talk policy issues, they can't even grasp what you're saying.
Absolutely. Good. Thank you. Okay, so let's now talk about how do you script your speech. Number one, you start with a word to say, this is what my speech is all about. My talk today is about this. And you say it from the word go, because I'm sure you've been in audience where someone is speaking and you're like, what are they talking about? Like 5-10 minutes down the road, you have no idea what they are talking about. Okay. So you need to set that from the word go. Just like from me, my topic is very clear. How do you script your winning speech or presentation on short notice? That is my word. And I talked about the why. Those of you who logged in earlier on time, I talked about the why. So you talk about the what, and then now you talk about the why. You talk about the why because you want people to be motivated to listen to you, to listen about your speech, to listen about your talk or presentation. They have to see value. You have to give them the reason why they should listen in. And there are two areas on the why part. Number one, the benefits, if you follow what I'm recommending. And you don't have to use the word benefits, but you should weave it in For example, when I was sharing earlier, I said, look, when you have scripted your speech, at least when you have notes, and again, I'm not a big fan. One of us earlier was asking me, is it good to write out the whole speech? I would say yes and no. Yes, because it gives you clarity in mind. No, you should not go in front of the audience to read your whole speech. You can write every detail if you want, if that's your style. That's not my style. But when it's time to present, you should just have an outline or bullets. Because the moment you have each and every word, then you're going to be reading, and that's not communicating. You're not doing a reading in church. So I'm going back to the why. I talked about the benefits. If you follow what I'm recommending, say, you recall how I said, okay, if you have an outline of your speech, then you're clear, you're more confident, and people are most likely to follow you, okay? That's part one of the why, or we can call it part A of the why. Okay. And then part B, by the way, I used a Word document. You know, those of you who have attended my talks, I always use slides, but I thought I would rather use a Word document so that I give you a script. I will share this script with you later. You'll share with me at the end. So on the why, you're talking about the benefits and then the costs if you don't follow my proposal or proposals. You recall I said, okay, if you don't have an outline, then you look all over the place, you look confused, and when you're confused, you cannot convince people. A confused mind cannot convince people. A confused mind cannot convince people because then you're lacking in confidence. And when you lack confidence and certainty, people will also not be certain about what you're talking about. So clarify that and let it show. If you have a slide presentation, you can talk about why you should finish, why you should, if we continue with the example of talking to these fresh university students that you're going to sponsor as an example, say, look, if you follow what we're advising you to do, if you follow the program, you'll graduate and then you'll get job opportunities. If you don't, then you look back, you lose opportunities, and tell you what, we have stories of characters who have come to beg us for opportunities, but we could not because they misused the opportunity they had, okay? Then once you're done with the what, so it is the what, then why. Once you're done with the why, now you've motivated them to listen, now you go into the how. How do you go about this? The how, something that you most likely you've not had many times, it could be that you almost never hear about people talking about when they are writing speeches or presenting, is shifting limiting beliefs. This is something I encourage you to always consider. I sometimes, most times, I shouldn't say, a good number of times, I forget this component, and yet it's a very, very critical component. If you have a message to sell, but people have limiting beliefs, or they have beliefs that are limiting them, they won't take on your message. Let me use something totally outrageous. I shouldn't call it outrageous, but which Apostle Rebecca will buy and understand. If, for example, you're preaching to people, some of them might think that they have committed so many crimes that they are too bad to be accepted by God. So once you know that that's a limiting belief, and you want them to come to God, so you need to address that limiting belief by telling them, hey, just know that God is unconditionally loving, regardless of what you are and have done. This is how God, just know that you will be accepted. So you're looking at limiting beliefs, turning the way of listeners to move forward, and my answer to that. So you're talking about the limiting belief one, and what is your answer to the limiting belief? So if I was preaching, now I know that's one of their limiting beliefs, and so I am addressing it from then on, okay? And Rebecca says true, yeah, exactly. So you need to ask yourself, what could be the limiting beliefs that these university students or aspiring students have that you need to address? One of the things that they might be, one of the limiting beliefs there could be, it's okay, we need we don't need to be conservative. We just need to have fun. That's a limiting belief. So you need to show them that, look, that fun that you're talking about is short-lived. Because, and then you give them an example to shift that belief. You say, for example, we know we talked to so-and-so, they did not listen to us, and this is what happened. Now I've shifted that belief. If I don't get pregnant, the boy will not love me. Yeah, I like that. Know that I love them. Thank you very much, Susan. So now that's an example. So if you know that this is a limiting belief, so you need to address that. Don't shy away from that. The problem is sometimes when we are communicating messages, we shy away from the hard stuff. So you say, look, and you can talk about it head on. Say, look, some of the things I'm telling you about here, of you not having sex or having unprotected sex, thinking that, hey, if I don't get pregnant, some of us might be thinking, and don't use the words you think, no, say, some of us might be thinking that, oh, if I don't get pregnant, the man will not love me. But let me tell you something. Me, as Susan, you're seeing me here, I gave birth after getting married. So it's possible. My husband waited for me. A real man who truly loves you will wait for you. And I'm sure you want a man who loves you, not who is lusting after you. Some of us are just victims of lust and not love. So you see what I've done there? So I've shifted that belief. So you need to know and outline these beliefs in your speech, in your presentation, such that then the message lands home. That's this is a very, very important point that most times, and even me when I'm training, I sometimes forget about this. And yet it is so powerful, because if you don't shift critical beliefs, it doesn't matter how wonderful your message is, it will go off the radar. So what I'm hearing is when you have such challenges, and here we are talking about, I'm talking about public speaking and not therapy per se, even though there could be a relationship. So long as what I'm hearing is you're not disagreeing with the value of shifting limiting beliefs. What you're saying is that there are those moments whereby you're passing on a certain message, and that is more in a counseling, coaching, one-on-one intervention. So it's a little bit different here, because now here you're talking about an individual. So that's one. But then two, there could also be, so the first words that came out of your mouth was, it is difficult to. Now that's a limiting belief. The moment you think it's difficult, then guess what? It's going to be difficult. So you need to believe that, okay, there must be a way to shift this person, because that person whom you feel is difficult to talk to, there is someone else who has the capacity to talk to them. So you need to ask yourself, you need to believe, first of all, that it's possible to talk to this person. And number two, get the skill sets on how to communicate to this person. Number three, seek divine guidance. Because God, who is the creator of this wonderful girl or wonderful boy, knows what needs to be said. And there are moments whereby you feel, and there are moments whereby you know that sharing certain things is going to be difficult, and God will tell you. So you need to. You came in later, but when I'm starting sessions, I start with a prayer to seek divine guidance. So seek divine guidance. There are things you should say. There are things you shouldn't say. It also depends on the tonation. It depends on how you build the relationship. Do you have a relationship with this person? Have you developed a rapport? All these are skill sets. Talking about which, Susan, I know that one of the skill sets we may have to develop for the rest of us later, especially people like Alan who are engaging these people one-on-one, is counseling skills. And I know someone who can help us with that. So that's something I'm noticing. But just know that so long as you understand the principle, so it's how can I need a case study, so which we cannot go into now, but I'll share my contact at the end. And then if I hear an exact example, I can advise you. But also just take note that it also depends on how you sequence the information. First, develop rapport, develop a relationship before you go deep into some matters. And when you say crying, also just because someone is crying does not mean that you've lost the plot. Crying is part of healing if they're in a safe zone, if they're in a safe context. And also don't take it as a failure in a way. Just celebrate that as a milestone. Now you know the story. Now you know the pain point. Now you know when you're talking to Apostle Rebecca or Calvin or whoever it is, say someone is struggling with this, and there are moments whereby, okay, this case, I need to transfer it so and so. Because within your team, there are people with different capabilities who can address certain situations. There are situations that you can address that Rebecca can't address. There are situations Rebecca can address and you cannot address. So those are my general comments, but in terms of a specific point, just know there are many factors: the context, the environment, the relationship, your tonation, the language you use, the questions you ask, how you look at them. All those are factors that help us in communication, in communicating effectively or not effectively. And this is some of the things I want us to be talking about every Monday in the evenings, and I'll be telling you how we can do that. So, Alan, does that give you some pointers? Yes or no? On the how, apologies, we should have done the beliefs. Now I've given you the structure. You list the beliefs, and then you think, okay, how can I address these beliefs? And you don't have to attack them directly. Sometimes you may be direct, sometimes you may be indirect, depending on the context. Remember, in communications, you just have to be tactical. You need to use emotional intelligence to see how to address this. And then on the how, once you've addressed the beliefs, then next you go to a step-by-step plan. So assuming you're giving them tips on how to start a business, or now let's go to on how to succeed at the university, how to get good grades. Number one, make sure you have your timetable. Number two, join a good group. Number three, make sure every Sunday you plan for your week. Those are steps. You say step one is this, step two is this, step three is this, step four is this. But this is a big but. Make sure that your how plan has what I call spices. Give examples, give a story, illustrate. You can quote, can give a metaphor. So when you do all this, you can also give statistics. That's another way to spice up things. Statistics. Because one of the reasons our speeches bore is because they are just too dry. You don't want to be mechanical. You want to provide both structure and creativity. You want to sell. Now, this is how you speak to the heart. You remember earlier I talked about you need to speak to the heart, to the mind, the heart, and the feet. Okay? This is how I want people to think. This is what I want them to know. This is what I want them to feel. This is what I want them to do. The feet, head, heart, feet, or hands. So one of the ways to do that is through stories. By sharing a story, it touches your heart. For example, Alan, you are sharing with me someone crying. That touched your heart. In that moment, they were sharing a story. It touched your heart. It could be an illustration, an example, a personal example. So that's how you add life to your speech. So this part, this segment, what I'm calling, and I'm saying that in all the steps, add the spices above. And you don't have to add all the 5, let me see how many are there. Are they 5 or 6? You don't have to add all the 6, but add 1 or 2. When you give, you notice I've been giving examples and illustrations throughout. So when you are giving step-by-step plans, and all these can come at any one moment. It can come on the what, on the why, on the how, and and it is recommended actually to start with a story, because then you grab people's hearts. Okay. That's how you communicate the how, and then next you communicate the what next. This is what I'm challenging you to do, and this you should be very specific on how you want them to move forward. And it is also recommended you end with a story that sells it, because that stories sell. You're grabbing people's hearts here. So, ladies and gentlemen, my belief is if you can structure your message, by first knowing what your audience is. This is how we started, in that you need to address two mistakes that most people make: not knowing their audience and not knowing their purpose. So if you know your audience by knowing their fears, their worries, their dreams, their frustrations, their achievements, their language, their age bracket, their socioeconomic standing, their education, and that is clear in your head, and then based on that, you clarify your purpose. And one tip I didn't clarify on purpose: if you don't know how to clarify the purpose, ask the host. Ask the host. By the end of my speech, how do you want the participants to think, feel, and behave that will make you feel like it was worth engaging me? This should be a question. If Susan invites you to speak to the staff, ask them that question. If you're going to a community, ask them this question. Then when they give you those pointers, write them down. That's your TOR. Clarify your purpose. Then when you're scripting your speech, know your what, know your why, know your how, know the steps, which are the steps, shift their beliefs, which I've clarified, and then the what next. And what next is really about action. What's the action you want them to take? Action or actions. These ones, we should say 1 to 2. Don't make them too many. Want them to make them specific so that when they implement those, they will move forward. Okay? So, first of all, let me see, someone typed something in the chat box. But the story should be a true story. Let me see. Who is this on writings that I select? Who is Arabi? Who is Arabi? Oh, that's Rebecca, Apostle Rebecca. Apostle Rebecca says, but the story should be a true story, not cooked. Illustrations are perfect. Some people tell lies, especially if they are personal story, to create an impression. Shortly, the story does not add up, and this is quite bad. Apostle Rebecca, I totally agree with you. And for me, it's not just quite bad. It is dangerous. It is immoral. It is a sin. Never, ever, ever, ever lie. Why? Because when you lie, one day you'll be caught. That's one. 2, your message won't be powerful. People will feel you. So right now I'm explaining to you these things. I'm speaking with clarity because I practice these things day in, day out. I've been doing this for years. So please always be truthful. Don't lie. Okay? Either use your own story or use someone else's story, but the most powerful stories are personal stories, personal experiences, where you have one, where you've not one. I've been honest with you. For example, I told you how with beliefs, sometimes I forget to shift people's beliefs. I was being very frank with you. So being vulnerable is actually very, very powerful, because when you're vulnerable, then people trust you more. So by me sharing with you where I've messed up or where I've not been strong at, I'm sure that didn't make you lose your respect for me. No, I doubt. If you did, please forgive me. Oh, sorry about that. Get over it. I pray that you get over it. So I'm forgetting a point. So there are 2 ways. Number 1, and if you've forgotten it, you've forgotten it. So be relaxed about it, first of all. Because the moment you look tense, you look worried, then you will lose the audience. That's 1. And your mind will perform at an even much lower level. 2, what I recommend, when you forget a point, you can reconstruct your previous point, and then it gives you space to remember the second point or the next point you are supposed to say. For example, assuming these are the 2 points, they are here top 2 mistakes. And then I say, not knowing your audience. And then I say number 2, and then number 2 disappears. So there are 2 ways. 1, which I recommend should be your first go-to point, is you first make some commentary around not knowing your audience. Because now this is clear to you. Yeah, not knowing your audience is a very, very big mistake. Because when you don't know your audience, how will you address people? So now I'm saying all those, how will you address people? And if you don't know where you're going, how will you get there? Because you need to know where you're going first. Now I'm saying all these things, meanwhile I'm looking for the next point, the next point. Now, in a short while, if you prepared, and that's why scripting these things is important, and what I recommend is important, let me first answer that, then I show you a permanent solution around that. Then, but if worst case scenario happens and you've totally forgotten or it's totally disappeared, indeed. So it's okay to say, you know what? I know the point will come. Let's go to the next point as I wait for this point to come again. Assuming you are not scripted it somewhere. It's okay. It's okay to forget something. Never take it that you are less of a human being if you forget a point. Now, how can you solve that problem permanently? Get a small piece of paper and write your bullets. The way you're seeing my bullets here, it's not a speech. So question, by the way, type in the chat, if all this was these bullets that the way I'm lifting them, can these bullets form a presentation? I shouldn't even ask you that question. As you've noticed, I've followed an outline and I've made a presentation. So write your bullets down and then you glance. So if you've written down your bullets, then you will not forget. But in case you forget and you had not written them down and they were in your head, at least I've given you a way out. God bless you all.